This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, your weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This is the show for August 2nd, and I'm your host, Darren McKee. With me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Cuboids?
Christina Roach.
Hello.
And producer Pat.
Hi, everybody.
We have a great show for you today. I'm going to look into whether redheads feel more pain. And then Christina is going to explore some celebrity medical advice. But first, Pat, has Iraq banned bomb detectors?
So on July 3rd of this year, a truck filled with explosives traveled 50 kilometers from Diyala province in Iraq to Baghdad and plowed into a building housing a coffee shop and stores shortly after midnight. The surrounding streets were packed with people who had gathered after breaking their Ramadan fasts.
Oh, boy.
Over 290 people were killed and 200 people were injured. On that 50-kilometer journey, the vehicle would have gone through at least half a dozen checkpoints, most of which would have been equipped with ADE 651 bomb detectors. There are a lot of these detectors in Iraq, with some reports suggesting the government has spent as much as $85 million on them. So with all these detectors, how did that truck full of explosives get through those checkpoints? First, let's take a look at the ADE 651 because if you believe the claims made by the manufacturer, it's actually a pretty amazing device.
It sounds like something from Acme.
It consists of a swiveling antenna mounted with a hinge to a plastic handle. It requires no battery or power source because it's powered by static electricity. The operator shuffles their feet for a few moments to charge the device and then holds it at right angles from their body. The antenna then swivels in the direction of the substance it's being used to detect.
Pat, did I see that in Sky Mall?
You may have, Darren. Now, I said substance because the devices claim to be much more than just a bomb detector. When you insert a programmed substance detection card, the ADE 651 supposedly can detect just about anything. Promotional material for the device claims that it can detect guns, ammunition, drugs, human bodies, contraband ivory, and banknotes at distances up to 1 kilometer.
Whoa.
It supposedly will detect those substances underground, through walls, underwater, or even from an airplane at an altitude of up to 5 kilometers.
Oh, really?
This sounds like magic.
Yeah.
So a magical mall,
skeptical.
not just a Sky Mall.
Right. So this all sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Let's dig in a bit. The New York Times did an investigation in 2009 and reported that U.S. military and technical experts believed the device was completely useless. U.S. Army Major General Richard Rowe told the newspaper that, quote, "There's no magic wand that can detect explosives. If there was, we'd all be using it." Sandia National Laboratories carried out testing of several such devices and found that none have ever performed better than random chance. An Iraqi guard and driver for the New York Times were able to drive 2 AK-47 rifles and ammunition through 9 police checkpoints that were using the devices, without any of them detecting the weapons. In 2008, good old James Randi issued a statement calling the ADE 651, quote, "a useless quack device which cannot perform any other function than separating naive persons from their money. It's fake, a scam, a swindle, and a blatant fraud. Prove me wrong and take the $1 million." He is, of course, referring to the James Randi Educational Foundation's now terminated $1 million challenge.
Well said, though. That's a good, nice quote, which hopefully would inform people how terrible this thing is.
Yeah.
For sure. So in June 2009, the U.S. Army carried out laboratory tests, including X-ray analysis on the ADE 651, and found it to be completely ineffective and fraudulent. As a result of that study, the U.S. military notified all military and civilian personnel in Iraq that the bomb detector should not be relied on as a means of ensuring the safety of any personnel. The BBC show Newsnight investigated the ADE 651 in January 2010, asking the University of Cambridge Computer Laboratory to assess one of the programmed substance detection cards. The laboratory found that the card contained only a standard radio frequency security tag, like the ones used in stores to prevent shoplifting. According to the laboratory, it was impossible for the card to detect anything. The card could not be programmed, it had no memory, no microprocessor, and no way to store any information.
Oh, jeez.
I bet that thing couldn't give you cancer.
Right. The cards were worth about 3 to 5 cents each, and the card reader was found to be an empty plastic box.
No.
Brutal.
In 2012, the head of Iraq's Interior Ministry Bomb Squad Department was convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison for accepting a bribe from the British company ATSC, who manufactured the ADE 651. And then in May 2013, James McCormick, the founder and managing director of ATSC, was convicted of 3 accounts of fraud for selling the devices and given 10 years in prison.
Oh, good.
Well, you say good, but I just said 2013. We're talking about a bombing that happened in 2016.
Oh, my gosh.
So while all that's pretty damning, just wait until you hear the history of the ADE 651. So the prototype for this device began life in the United States as the Gopher, marketed as, quote, the perfect gift for the golfer who has everything. It was a $20 plastic gadget claimed to use advanced technology to help golfers find lost golf balls.
No.
But with the simple addition of nothing more than a new label, the Gopher became the Quattro Tracker and was sold by a former used car salesman as a detector for drugs and explosives.
The only thing more trustworthy than a car salesman is a used car salesman, followed by a former used car salesman.
So after the FBI declared it a fraud in 1996, a British man involved in the device brought the idea back to the UK, where the scam resurfaced as the Mole. Attempts were made to market the Mole to British government agencies, but in 2001, it was declared a fraud by the Brits. Still, it was repackaged again under a few different names. The GT200 remote substance detector was sold mainly in Mexico, Thailand, the Middle East, and Africa. The device retailed for $8,000, but its highest sale price for a single unit was $803,000. In 2013, Gary Bolton, who sold the devices, was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The Alpha 6 was sold to Egypt, Thailand, and Mexico. It retailed for $3,200, and its highest sale price was $25,000.
Wow.
It was manufactured and sold by Samuel Tree and his wife, Joan. Tree was given 3.5 years in jail, and his wife was ordered to do 300 hours unpaid community work. And then we have our ADE 651, which was sold mostly to Iraq. It went for $8,000, but got as high as $40,000 for a single unit. As we know, its manufacturer, James McCormick, is now serving 10 years. All these devices, essentially no different than a $20 plastic novelty for golfers.
Oh, my gosh.
How terrible. How absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But still, as we talked about, in 2016, thousands of the devices were still being used in Iraq, and many people swear that they worked because they sometimes did find bombs. So how is that possible? The detector is essentially a glorified dowsing rod.
Oh, right.
Now, I was pretty surprised that we've never done a segment on dowsing or the idiomotor effect. It's probably something that we should cover sometime because I'm only going to gloss over it right now. Dowsing is a supposed way of locating water or minerals underground using a dowsing rod. Traditionally, this was a Y-shaped twig. The ends of the Y were held in each hand, and when the wand passed over, say, water, it was supposed to move by itself. The practice was once really common, and many people still believe it. For example, there is an American Society of Dowsers who claim that the technique can be used to find all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. The reason dowsing or divining just won't go away, the reason it keeps hanging around and convincing people is that it really can appear to be better than chance. But the explanation for this has nothing to do with the divining rod or McCormick's phony detector. It's the idiomotor effect.
Right.
In dowsing, just like a Ouija board, someone unconsciously provides the movement as they anticipate the result of their action. If you, based on clues that you may have picked up, believe a car may be carrying explosives, you may swing the antenna of a fake bomb detector towards the car without realizing that you're providing that movement. Mm-hmm. This whole fake bomb detector story is very sad. Not only were a few fraudsters selling fake devices that resulted in many deaths, it seems that kickbacks, bribery, and government corruption were a huge part of their success. But there is a bit of good news. The reason I'm talking about it is because, as a result of this tragic bombing on July 3rd of just this year, the Prime Minister of Iraq has finally banned the use of these detectors in his country.
Sheesh.
Finally.
Yeah.
How do people live with themselves? I just don't understand.
I was thinking about that too. I think we kind of give people the benefit of the doubt, and even some people who have certain conspiracy theories, they're kind of still on the side of there's a problem and we have to make the world better. But this really just seems people looking to exploit others, or really just not even care about them just to make money.
Yeah.
And like aside from like the death and the physical harm aspect, there's like the intellectual harm of selling a technology which isn't even a technology, just junk, and then demoralizing people, and the whole thing's just such a mess.
It's not even an unintended side effect. Like, this is the expected result of people using your device. You sell it to people to find bombs. You know it's not going to work. You know there's a considerable chance people will die from you selling this device and making money. This is so far beyond someone just sort of exploiting someone for money for something that doesn't really do anything. This is just terrible.
And if you look at the numbers that I talked about, sure, these things were going for, $3,000 or $5,000 or $8,000, and getting as high as like $25,000 and $40,000 for single units. And I think one was almost $1 million for a single unit, 800,000. You can get some really good equipment and systems in place to detect bombs for that kind of money.
Yeah.
That's a
or
good
even,
point.
Food. Depending how fungible the budget is.
But if that is your goal, there are actual systems or things like dogs that really can detect bombs.
Just spend that money on staff to just manually do more searches, and
sure,
you're just going to get way more results. Like there's
yeah. That's one other thing I read is that this dowsing rod essentially took the place of real physical searches because the physical searches took so much longer.
Everyone's looking for a magic bullet, right?
Yep.
Do redheads feel more pain? I'm currently listening to an interesting audiobook called Red, A History of Redheads by Jackie Collis Harvey. It's a good overview with many explorations in the world of art and history, but there is also some science that is touched upon. One of these tidbits is that redheads appear to process pain differently than those with other hair colors. Is this true, though? And if so, why would that be? Now, before I address those questions, a very quick look at what causes red hair. And this is from a paper called Increased Sensitivity to Thermal Pain and Reduced Subcutaneous Lidocaine Efficacy in Redheads. Spoiler alert, by Liam et al. And this is a quote. Red hair nearly always results from mutations of the melanocortin-1 receptor gene, MC1R. The human MC1R is expressed on the surface of melanocytes. These are the cells that produce pigment in skin and hair. And it is a key regulator of intracellular signaling, so signals between cells, to the melanin biosynthetic pathway governing pigment formation, to the process that colors stuff. In general, the balance of pheomelanin, which leads to yellow-red coloring, and eumelanin, which leads to dark brown, pigments determine hair and skin color in the Caucasian population. The red hair phenotype results from excess pheomelanin production due to the dysfunctional MC1Rs. We'll just say atypical. It doesn't have to be dysfunctional. In contrast, when a normal MC1R is expressed, the predominant pigment produced by melanocytes is eumelanin, resulting in a high eumelanin to pheomelanin ratio. So that, at root, is what causes red hair. But what about this pain thing? Well, in the study I mentioned above, they performed experiments on 30 red-haired and 30 dark-haired women to look at pain sensitivity using electrical current of different frequencies. Different frequencies map onto different pain fibers in the body, and different pathways. They were trying to be thorough there, as well as using warm and cold temperature thresholds, meaning pain stimuli. And they did these with nothing added for the patient, but they also used lidocaine on the surface of the skin or just under the skin, which is a so-called freezing agent. Getting right to the overall finding, the results indicate, this is a quote, redheads are more sensitive to thermal pain and are resistant to the analgesic effects of subcutaneous lidocaine. There's no difference for the other electrically induced pain. That said, another study found that redheads are less sensitive to pain from multiple sources, including electrically induced pain.
Less sensitive?
Yes.
Okay.
So this was saying redheads are more sensitive to thermal pain, but they're more resistant to anesthetic under the skin.
Sure.
Further, in a different paper, Liam et al., same original researcher, found that people with red hair require greater amounts of anesthetic, which makes some sense if they're more sensitive to pain.
Right.
This, in turn, could be a reason why many redheads have issues going to the dentist. If you're going to the dentist and you're getting an inappropriate amount of freezing, you are less likely to want to go back to the dentist. I went last week and it wasn't pleasant, but it didn't really hurt as I had some good freezing. Some freezing before more freezing, as they do it in 2 stages.
That's so MC1R typical of you.
Typical. To add more complexity, an article on Science Nordique discusses evidence that redheads are less sensitive to stinging pain in the skin as measured by injecting capsaicin into the skin. Capsaicin is the active ingredient in chili, producing the same burning feeling in the skin as it would in the mouth, and it's used because it can cause a pain sensation without affecting your muscles or other body parts. Great for studies. The article quotes Professor Lars Arendt Nielsen of the Center for Sensory-Motor Interaction at Aalborg University as saying, as a quote, "Our tests show that redheads are less sensitive to this particular type of pain. They react less to pressure close to the injected area or to a pinprick. They seem to be a bit better protected, and that is a really interesting finding."
So redheads would be able to handle spicier foods?
Supposedly.
Really?
That's exactly correct. But they may be more sensitive, depending on the study, to certain types of stinging pain, but they also would need more anesthetic, which at least is consistent.
Yep.
So it appears that redheads do process pain differently. Is there any reason why this might be? Well, it isn't certain, but the most likely culprit is, of course, somewhere in the genetics. Now, Wikipedia had a decent description. So it said that the unexpected relationship of hair color to pain tolerance appears to exist because redheads have a mutation in that good old MC1R. And this is a hormone receptor that can apparently respond to at least 2 types of hormones. One is the pigment-driving melanocyte-stimulating hormone, MSH, and 2, the pain-relieving endorphins.
Wow.
Both of these derive from the same precursor molecule, POMC, and are structurally similar. So something's going on here where the pigment-driving hormone, the MSH, which is what's leading to the coloring, and pain-relieving endorphins are interacting with certain pathways and causing some differential effects. So in conclusion, redheads sometimes do feel more pain, but we still aren't exactly sure why.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
I would have guessed that there was probably no difference.
Right, you could say it's some sort of psychological effect or some sort of expectancy of what the scientist wants effect, but there is some logic that if your hair color is linked to other things that are happening in terms of how you process pain, the hair color will be sufficiently indicative of a differential pain response.
Sure. But so much of what is sort of expectation, sort of stereotypes based on how someone looks is so fake, is so made up, right?
Right.
Blondes and this and this and that, and
Right, it does not
you
serve
just
like
assume it's
right, there's not some overt molecular pathway that has a relevance for how you might stereotype someone.
yeah.
Yeah. Cristina, have any celebrities offered any great medical advice lately?
Well, perhaps I should preface with a heads up that I'll be talking about sexual anatomy, just in case you have little ones around while you're listening and have any concerns. I thought it'd be fun to start off with a little game of Who Said That? I'll give you guys a little background, a quote, and then ask you to name the most likely answer from 4 choices. Cool? Recently, a noteworthy celebrity said, quote, "No joke, vitamin E may strengthen vaginal lining," going on to cite its antioxidant properties and encouraging women to moisturize their presumably dry and irritated nether regions using vitamin E oil. So who said it? A. Oprah Winfrey. B. Gwyneth Paltrow. C. One of the Kardashians. Or D. None of the above, because it would be ridiculous for someone so unqualified to be giving health advice. What do you guys think?
I'll reserve my answer because I know.
All right. Adam, Darren?
Well, after V steaming, I'd have to guess Gwyneth Paltrow. Though I'm going to add a caveat that maybe it wasn't her because she doesn't really write all the articles on her little crappy blog thing.
Since Adam picked Gwyneth, I'll just pick one of the Kardashians. I was also thinking how those 3 options is someone's dream conversational evening and
No
my
kidding.
nightmarish conversational evening.
Depends which Kardashian.
That's touche, Adam. Touche.
Well, Oprah's pimped many questionable things in the past, I'll give you that, giving guys like Dr. Oz a public forum to promote quack treatments. And self-proclaimed lifestyle expert Gwyneth Paltrow has also promoted a lot of woo, including vaginal steaming, which I covered last year. But this time, Darren, you're correct. The hashtag Leave Your Vagina Alone proponents have a new adversary with a legion of followers hanging on her every word, namely Khloe Kardashian. By the way, I checked how many Twitter followers she has before we started the show. 21.5 million.
Wow.
Oh, that's like 21.5 million more than me.
I was actually making reference to our show. I'm like, so just as much as us. Just as much as the population of Canada, 80% of it.
Her fan base is mainly young females in the 18 to 34-year-old demographic. For the record, I have nothing against Khloe or any of the Kardashians. In fact, as a publicist working in the entertainment field, I am consistently impressed by how savvy they are at creating and bolstering their brand. But in case you're wondering, none of the Kardashian clan have any medical credentials, including in the field of gynecology. So let's start there.
You don't say.
The genesis of this recent Kardashian tip is a tweet from Khloe, aka Coco, that read, "I use vitamin E oil every night. Read why you should too on my app." By the way, this is a pretty clever way to bait followers because in order to access that content that she links to, you need to be a premium paid subscriber, and access to premium content such as beauty tips, etc. is $2.99 a month. I caught wind of this story when Dr. Jen Gunter, my fave OBGYN and defender of evidence-based medicine, tweeted about it. She's become a go-to expert in her field whenever celebrity-driven nonsense hits social media or the news, and she regularly debunks this stuff on her blog. Gunter tweeted that when this story broke, she knew something was up because her phone, email, social feeds went nuts asking her about vitamin E. As she told the Daily Beast, "I would not recommend this, nor is there any study that looks at this for healthy premenopausal women. If you are 32 and have a dry vagina, see your doctor and try a silicone-based lube." She goes on to say, at 32 years of age, Khloe Kardashian should not be experiencing vaginal dryness. If she is, she should see a doctor instead of telling other young women to try vitamin E. Now, you may be thinking, who in their right mind blindly takes any health or medical advice from a Kardashian without checking with a professional?
I'm thinking it's a subset of a certain group of 21.5 million people.
You're right. Sadly, a lot of people, including an editor for a lifestyle website called Your Tango, who wrote in a post last week, "When Khloe Kardashian tells me to put vitamin E on my vagina, I am absolutely going to do it."
If everyone's vagina jumped off a bridge, would yours?
I can't make this stuff up, guys. She goes on to say, "This seems reasonable enough, and it's backed up by science," hyperlinking to a WebMD entry as the science backup.
Oh, no.
I wish I was kidding. She also says that Khloe's advice syncs up with tidbits handed out by professionals at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, hyperlinking to a page on their site that suggests women who've had cancer treatments or any cancer risk-reducing surgery could use vaginal moisturizers, including vitamin E liquid capsules. Okay, just to be clear, there is some limited evidence that vitamin E suppositories may help menopausal women who can't otherwise take hormone replacement therapy or women who've undergone radiation therapy. But that doesn't mean healthy women, especially in that 18 to 34-year-old age group, should be advised to do it too. Gunter likens it to applying sunscreen to prevent a sunburn, and then also applying it on your hands to prevent getting burned when you're taking a hot pan out of the oven. Might I add that the Cancer Center still stresses you review all of their suggestions with your doctor first. Mm-hmm. So what about Khloe's claim that vitamin E, no joke, can strengthen vaginal lining? Well, there's absolutely no hard evidence that vitamin E can do this. Here's an excerpt from Gunter's blog on the topic. Strengthening tissue, what Khloe claims vitamin E will do, is one of those quasi-medical terms often favored by those selling quack cures and supplements. I'm going to guess she means less likely to tear with penetration. Here's some advice. If your vagina is tearing during sex, you have a medical problem and should go to a board-certified gynecologist. If your vagina is fine and sex feels good, then leave it alone. I linked to Gunter's blog post in the show notes as she goes into a really detailed explanation and anatomy lesson, reminding us that the vagina is already a well-functioning ecosystem. What is no joke, putting vitamin E oil on your vagina without a doctor's recommendation can cause you a lot of grief. Many people have allergic reactions to vitamin E, so if you're oblivious or you don't test it on your skin before applying it to such a sensitive region like your vulva or vagina, which again, to be clear, you really shouldn't do, you may trigger a very uncomfortable or painful allergic reaction.
It's so interesting how humans end up having so many problems just by like, well, I wonder if I stuck this somewhere. Like, just don't do it. Just don't do that. Not first anyway.
Also, vitamin E, among other oil-based lubricants, can break down latex condoms. And this increases the risk of unplanned pregnancies. That's certainly something Khloe's young fan base wouldn't necessarily consider or know, well, unless they took 2 seconds to Google it. But Coco also suggests that her followers take vitamin E capsules orally along with slathering it on your body. In a Life Science article titled, Are Vitamin E Supplements Healthy or Harmful?, Dr. John Swartzberg, an internist and specialist in infectious disease and clinical professor emeritus of medicine at the University of California, writes, in general, there's little clinical research showing that vitamin E supplements benefit your health. Most recent clinical trials have been negative or inconclusive. Khloe is also seemingly unaware of the risks associated with taking antioxidants in high doses. Recent studies show that taking high doses of vitamin E regularly could actually shorten your lifespan. The skin and vagina are very efficient at absorbing a variety of compounds, including vitamin E oil. Dr. Gunter stresses it's also important to remember that antioxidants can have negative effects, like promoting the growth of cancer cells. Vitamin E doesn't know which cells are healthy and which are cancer. She asks in her blog post, what could this do to a cell infected with the human papilloma virus? What if removing free radicals is preferentially better for a cell infected with high-risk HPV? That's pretty scary. So let's recap what we learned today, okay? If you don't have any issues down under, and I don't mean Australia, don't create any by taking unsubstantiated advice from a celebrity. If it hurts when you have sex, please see your doctor or gynecologist. And perhaps most importantly, just because you have a vagina doesn't mean you should start doling out medical advice on how to look after it.
Just having one doesn't make you an expert.
Nope.
Exactly.
And thanks for joining us once again, listeners. Pat explored the issue of a horrible fake bomb detector that Iraq was using for far too long, and thankfully they finally banned it. I showed you that redheads do seem to feel more pain, and it seems to link with their atypical MC1R receptor, which leads to the red hair. And finally, celebrities give lots of medical advice, but they really shouldn't give any. And don't put vitamin E in or around or near or inside or on your vagina unless a doctor has explicitly told you. And even then, you might want to get a second opinion. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
Stay classy, not smartassy.
Good night, everyone.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Darren, did you look at the question of whether or not redheads have souls?
Think better to act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
Oh, sorry. I was so